Welcome back to the I Suck at Writing show. It was a little bit too long of a layoff for me, but that just means there's a lot to talk about. Starting out with some very important addendums because it was complete amateur hour in the last episode. I linked the wrong amount of pages underneath the video, which is kind of the whole premise of the show, so I'm a complete certified idiot. It was meant to be pages 1 through 3, but it ended up being pages 1 through 6, which was kind of the next 2 or 3 episodes. So if you got a free peek, you got a free peek, but I don't think you're missing too much with the show still finding its legs. The second error is the one that I am most upset about. The character of Tope was introduced in the first 2 pages that we went over in the first episode. She was accidentally listed as Vespa, which is the name of a character that'll come up later on in the story. In every draft leading up to the draft that the audience sees, Tope was listed as Vespa, but for some reason I changed her name to Tope in the final draft. But it's called I Suck at Writing for a reason. But on a lighter note, I'm absolutely invigorated by the amount of feedback and attention the first episode got. It's a community-based show and a show that relies on the audience and audience participation. A lot of people showed out and made the show, and that makes me really happy. I've only ever shown my work to family members and people that are close to me, and you even get a skewed answer when you hear from them. So it was an absolutely flattering perspective for people to even say something remotely nice about my work. With the flattering feedback came the criticism as well, but the criticism is so warranted and so invited because that is what I want with this show. I want a dialogue with the audience. The show does not happen without community participation, so thank you so much. So let's get into the first comment today. Matt Scott 53 writes, "This is pretty imaginative and funny." Starts out with a compliment. I'd say get the point out quicker and lose all the parentheticals and dialogue that aren't completely necessary. Matt, thanks for participating, and your comment actually brings up a really interesting topic. I feel like the use of parentheticals have always been a sign between somebody who's an amateur and somebody who's a novice in screenwriting. I feel like in a lot of community-based competitions or first-time writers or first-time people showing their work, you'll see the misuse of parentheticals, and there's actually a lot of that in the Fiction of Deities. I think you'll see a lot of amateurs, including myself when I first started out, put the action in parentheticals, and I think I do that a lot in this script. It's almost like asterisk writing for the weird kids. So to somebody first starting out, I could see wanting to put action in parentheticals. It just looks like a good place to put it. So to somebody first starting out or to somebody who has amateuristic tendencies, I could see wanting to put action in the parentheses. It just looks like a good spot to get your point across. It's above the dialogue. It's right next to the character. And Matt makes a good point. The only time it's really appropriate is when you're trying to describe who someone's talking to. And Matt says, I know it sounds bitchy, but I've seen people complain about it. Never bitchy when you're making a good point. Thanks for participating. Our next commenter was Tian or Tyan. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name because you left the most. So let's pick this apart. First off, I already like the whole thing about God's creation, etc. I'd say your hook as described in the video worked out. Thank you. I originally did not start off looking for a mythological setting or a mythological premise, but it just seems like the most appropriate way to describe the characters because the characters have such godlike tendencies and the setting is so broad and the premise is so broad. You deal with the fabrics of the universe, you deal with good and evil, you deal with people that have powers, you deal with people that don't have powers. Fantasy would be a good blanket term for it, but I think I lean more towards mythology because it's supposed to be allegorical and a fictional way to describe how we came to be as humans. Basically, the only thing I could add is that some things are not well described. It kind of disorients me. Examples. What does karma look like? I'd like you to tell me how you imagine them to look like. You already did that with Tope, so why not with karma too? He brings up a good point. I did not pay fair dividends to Tope and karma equally. I think Tope got a little bit more of description because she came in first, and I think visually Karma would have been more described just by her actions, just by the destruction of what she's doing to the benevolent character that we were just introduced to. But absolutely good point. Way less descriptive words with Karma. I have also been ridiculed in the past, and I think that this is something that people with amateuristic tendencies also do in screenwriting is they fill up the action with bricks of paragraphs. It looks like a frickin' Stephen King novel. Even though I have 10,000 miles to go, this was my best push at professional looking work. work, I really was hypersensitive to having very minimalistic action and description this time, because before I would go on and on. You wrote that Torm is walking through a surreal, state-of-the-art corridor. That confuses me big time. What state are we talking about? Maybe specify. Also, I think you may miss out on describing the way this world, the society looks, and things like how to show through this detail how the society ticks, etc. Again, good points, and they're very hard to defend when you, the audience member, doesn't understand what I'm trying to convey. I believe it is always the fault of the creator or the writer when the audience member does not understand what the person is trying to convey. I was very ambiguous in the description of a lot of things in the Fiction of Deities. I have realized on a lot of my reviewings of it. But I think a lot of that falls on, once again, the hypersensitivity to the description and my action, and also with how you guys don't understand how crazy I am. You guys don't understand how brokenly imaginative it is, and not saying that in a positive way or a negative way. It's just, it's such a vast concept to me that I've always tried putting on paper, and I finally went for it and rewrote it. And that is one of my faults as a writer and as a creator. I have a very hard time getting my point across with how vast the ideas are. The Fiction of Deities is a extremely grandiose concept. It's essentially demigods that will eventually come into the roles of establishing the fabrics in the universe. Now, that can either be described in a 25,000 word novel or in a 40-page screenplay, and I chose the latter. But nonetheless, I think I did it poorly, and I think I did it poorly enough to get called out. In the rewrite, I will definitely look more into the fundamentals of place, time, and activity and description. I think more activity in the background will fix a lot of problems visually for the reader. I haven't been burned on it yet, but I will be interested to see if it's something that gets called out in the future. I feel like any 5-star screenplay has some kind of wordplay or some kind of fun beat to their words. I feel like that's part of the process of getting sold as well. Ty Entertain, thank you very much, and thank you for the volume of participation. From France 112, the cottage industry forming around neophyte writers' anxiety is growing larger and larger. Damn, I needed a thesaurus for that one. But I think I understand what you're saying. So I'm 24, I don't know what cottage industry means because I went to public school. Had to look that up. Then I looked up neophyte and learned a new word as well. One, I'm pretty sure screenwriting was a cottage industry to begin with. Everybody writes in their house, everybody has a day job, everybody sucks. Two, this is a show by amateurs for amateurs, and I don't say that with attitude. I say that in the realization that majority of people are not good at this. And you're absolutely correct. The community is growing larger and larger. You wouldn't have camera people like me trying to do something like this. This is completely anti-writing. It has nothing to do with writing. It's a show about writing. But I don't think ugly-ass screenwriters are going to catch a break anytime soon because they let YouTubers make videos now. They let basketball players make movies now. It's no disrespect to anybody, but as soon as hot people or as soon as talented people start doing anything, they are allowed to do it and nobody else is allowed to do it. And I think a lot of nerdy-ass screenwriters are really butthurt about that. But it's coming, and screenwriting, I feel like, is going to be something like stand-up comedy. Nobody's going to give a how you do it, the correct way of the art. It's going to matter about who's in it, who's fronting the money for it, and who's going to see it. So that'd be something that'd be really interesting for you guys to leave a comment about. Do you think screenwriting is going to stay nerdy and stay people typing away in a corridor, or do you think that screenwriting will go pop eventually and pretty people will get to it and completely change the format? France112, thank you for your comment. A lot to talk about from that. Lastly was probably one of the more innocent and one of the nicer comments. Bongo_bananas. I'm going to follow along with this. I watched the video. It's pretty interesting. Hopefully I'll learn something new as well as let's help each other out, the amateurs. Let's go pro. P.S. Please look into the camera if you can in your introduction segment. I'm just saying. I got absolutely grilled on my eye contact on the last episode, but I'm terrified of you guys, and I was actually going for a Sam Jones, DJ Vlad look, and I'm just going to leave it to those guys. And like this gentleman said, help the amateurs out. This is a place of discussion, something to pass around. It's food for thought in screenwriting. Screenwriting's not going anywhere. The community keeps getting bigger and bigger. The discussion keeps getting bigger and bigger. And it's kind of a sport or a craft of permanent amateurs. It's like shooting hoops in the driveway, dude. So buckle in, share your work below, tear my work apart. Let's get into the next 3 to 5 pages of the Fiction of Deities. Thank you so much for watching. All right, welcome back to the Fiction of Deities. This is episode 2. We're going over pages 3 and 5. So where we left off, Torm goes, interesting. You're not the first employee he's threatened with occupational sacrifice this week. Something must be up. So we get this cliffhanger. And we teased all last episode about what type of a menace the character of Alvis was. Interior, Alvis's corporate office, halls. Torm marches along surreal, state-of-the-art hallways and floors that seem to go on forever. We pass by rooms that host a spectrum of settings from business meetings, dance clubs, indoor biomes, schools, labs, etc. Interior, Alvis's gym. The bounce of a basketball can be heard clear with each step. Torm makes his way into a community-sized basketball court. Alvis, 50s, African-American male, demigod, shoots hoops with his shirt off and runs drills with a trainer. Alvis, I've been looking all over for you. I gotta talk to you. Alvis pays no mind and continues to compete against his trainer. Please try and take this thing from me. Oh, I can. You're just not ready for the results. Alvis. Alvis loses patience while playing. Torm, what? Torm jolts in fear and begins walking towards Alvis timidly. So the beginning of the scene is something that I struggled with in previous drafts of the Fiction of Deities. I recently got grilled this episode on my lack of description, or my lack of making sense of description of the environment that this takes place in. So Alvis's office is home to Alvis, who is a demigod. We will come to find out later in the story that he is absolutely adored by the gods of the universe, and he's essentially God's favorite child. So you would imagine God's favorite child to have some cool shit. Anything that your heart can imagine. You know when you have a dream and rooms don't make sense? It's kind of like The Shining. One room leads to a swimming pool. That swimming pool would lead to an outdoor shed. It doesn't make sense. That's where Alvis lives. Alvis lives in an environment where anything that he wants is at the drop of a dime. His setting is whatever he wants it to be. But it's also a corporate office for a reason. He is at work. He is in charge of the minions and the minds of those who will help him and aid him in finding Karma and Vespa, which we'll get into the relationship of Alvis, Karma, and Vespa in the future pages. Is it possible to spoil your own work? So when Torm marches along the halls, every hall is a different flavor. It's a remix. Torm sees people at work, dance clubs, and indoor biomes. There's children learning. It's anything your heart can imagine. So Torm travels around these halls to get to Alvis's gym, kind of giving us a visual idea of how rich and prosperous Alvis is. We walk up on the gym and we hear the bounce of a basketball. So if you were essentially God's favorite child and you loved basketball, would you not just have people to play one-on-one with all day? So Torm is sneaking up on Alvis, doing one of his favorite pastimes during the middle of the day. Alvis, I've been looking all over for you. I gotta talk to you. Alvis essentially loathes Torm because Torm steers the ship. Torm has to keep Alvis on balance. You kind of see that with anybody that's special in this world or anybody that has a special talent. They're an absolute nutcase. They are an absolute loose cannon. But if they have somebody steering that cannon or keeping that person at bay, a lot of good things can get done. Alvis is an extremely powerful being, could go toe-to-toe with essentially the gods of the universe. So that power is eventually going to get to his head, and little does everybody know how much Torm does behind the scenes to keep everything going. Alvis doesn't pay any mind to him, and he keeps playing. Alvis! Alvis! It's kind of like Alvin and the Chipmunks. Imagine Torm just being the biggest bitch alive, just nagging you. Imagine trying to do your favorite thing, and then you got this guy nagging you to do chores constantly. That's how Alvis sees it, at least. And Alvis loses his patience, and Torm can get ahead of himself sometimes because he knows the result if he pisses off Alvis. He knows how much physical and emotional pain that causes the office and him on his own. I mean, we just heard on the last page that he threatened somebody with occupational sacrifice, whatever that means. So not the guy you want to piss off. So Torm gets into his bitching. I know I'd usually have to make an appointment, and I'd never dare interrupt any of your private affairs. Alvis throws the ball off the backboard and slam dunks over the top of the trainer, decapitating him in the process and causing a gory mess. So this is when the hard R of the pilot comes in. I imagine this is adult animation, so imagine this all in 2-dimensional animation or 3-dimensional animation. I don't care. I would just care if it got made. But as fantasistical as the story is, as twisted as my brain is, people are meaningless to Elvis. I don't know if you've ever known a famous person before, but you are an ant to them. You don't mean anything to them, and you don't have to mean anything to them. You are a luxury to them, and it's a luxury that they're keeping you alive or keeping them in your circle at all times. That's where fans come from. You adore those who bring you great power. Therefore, all of Elvis's staff is greatly disposable, and you can see that here, how he literally decapitates his trainer that he was having a good time with. It's not like the trainer insulted him or anything. They were just in a friendly pickup game, and he killed him in the process. I think the gory mess and the realism of the death would carry a lot of weight on the power of Elvis and how real this environment is. When people talk about a script being grounded, I want the script to be grounded as in you believe the properties of the universe. It's very fake, it's very fiction, but I want you to believe that these people that appear as mortal, how that would feel dying to a god, how that would feel getting smashed by a god. I want people to believe it. And a hard R makes you believe anything, right? And now we get to see the menacing hothead that Elvis is. You see what you did? You're so good at getting me hot and causing accidents. Now, with it's one thing to be a loose cannon villain. There's tons of those. You know, they'll kill their peers. You've seen that from the beginning of time. But I like to imagine Elvis as a really abusive, aggressive, controlling boyfriend or girlfriend. I feel like some of the most pure evil in the world comes from those situations and those relationships. And doing something like that to somebody that you love or somebody that you claim that you love. That's when you get to see that version of evil in its purest form, and I attribute that a lot to Elvis. There's a lot of people that keep Elvis's life alive and keep Elvis's power alive and keep a reason for him to be around in the universe, and he never pays any mind to those who help him. He usually kills them or smashes them, but these people are in such low standards of the universe that they have to just obey this guy. Elvis picks the ball out of the pool of blood and begins shooting again nonchalantly. So that was nothing to him. He's up and down. This man is as manic as they come, but you would need a new diagnosis for this guy. He is completely nice 1 minute without getting hot under the collar, no sweat, no imbalance in brain chemistry, and then when he needs to use the power and the fierceness of rage and evil, he will use it on the drop of a dime. A lot of his power comes from the duality of his morality, and is something that you can also see in Karma and Tope if you can connect the dots there. Now, Torm just got threatened, but he isn't backing down in this scenario, which actually attests to the severity of the information that he probably has. Exactly, Elvis. I wouldn't risk my head down here. That's why it's a big deal. Elvis turns and launches the ball at Torm's head as hard as he can like a fastball. Torm covers up and shields the blow. Torm's been through this shit before. He has been killed by Elvis many times and resuscitated by Elvis many times. He is in constant servitude to Elvis and knows how to deal with it and knows how to get through it. Elvis walks up to the communication panel on the wall and taps it a few times. I accidentally killed a guy in the gym. You should send somebody down here. He walks back towards Torm, who's back on his feet, holding his head in pain. Elvis takes a massive deep breath and flips an emotional switch. Join me upstairs, old friend. Anyone willing to interrupt my basketball time of leisure must have something really important. Elvis motions towards a flight of stairs that heads to his personal office overlooking the court. So Torm is applauding in his head in this scene because he got a point across to Elvis without absolutely getting his ass beat, and he got Elvis to take him serious for once. It has not been revealed what the information is yet that Torm has, but we can tell we're getting closer and closer to finding that out. And like we keep saying, it must be something that's very important if Elvis is willing to give an ear to it. And another thing that can attest to the surrealness of the environment, Elvis has a basketball court and then an office overlooking the top of it. So there's a lot of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory-esque environments in the building. It's a palace of pleasure. All right, and we get to the last page of today's episode. Now, there's a lot of information and a lot of detail in this part, so I encourage you to follow along, and I'm going to try keeping my cadence very slow, and please, please, please bear with the voice acting. It's something I ran into that I did not know I was bad at. Interior, Elvis's corporate office building, personal office. Elvis sits in his office chair coloring a coloring book on his desk. A large TV runs loud commercials. Torm is nervous to speak. I'm sorry you had to see that, man. I've really tried cutting back on killing the employees lately. No worries, Elvis. You must do what you do. The reason I came down here, I know you're here about Karma and Tope. I never see you run around here anymore unless you're running messages for the Modessa. Elvis slowly hides under his desk after his sentence. Torm is weirded out by the shenanigans. Elvis crawls on the floor to his overlooking windows and looks down on the court where the workers are mortified at the sight of the dead trainer. Can I throw you at those people? It would be so funny. I promise I'll heal you after. What? No, you didn't heal that guy on the ground. Why would you heal me? 'Cause you're my buddy. So what an awesome scene that I finally get to go over with you guys that describes so much of the story. We add more to Elvis's gluttony, that he's having a very important meeting and he's just sitting there coloring on a coloring book. Probably has some dope-ass markers too. There's a large TV running loud-ass commercials in the background. It's not a very good environment for Torm to speak up in. But Elvis makes it easy for him and comes out first and actually apologizes, saying that he's sorry and he's trying to cut back on killing the employees lately. Torm doesn't care. He's trying to get his point across, and Elvis cuts him off there too, saying, I know you're here about Karma and Tope. I never see you run around here anymore unless you're running messages for the Modessa. So hopefully that caught you a little bit, or I'm absolutely a terrible writer, but we get introduced to a new name. The Modessa in this sentence look like they're described as a people and not as a specific person, and they are. The Modessa are the gods in which love and favor Elvis so much. In a realm with very weird power dynamics and vast settings, there's one definitive power, and it's the Modessa. They're the ones in charge, and they're in charge of the universe. Think of the gods of the gods. So we get a little bit more of a glimpse into what Torm's role is as well. He runs messages between the Modessa and Elvis, which adds more to his character of keeping the shit together of literally everybody in this story. So we can kind of see for somebody that's super powerful, he's having a tough time talking about hard things. There seems to be something going on with the Karma and Tope dynamic and his relationship with the Modessa as well. In the process of crawling on the floor, Elvis makes his way over to the overlooking windows that are looking down on the basketball court, and he can see the workers cleaning up the damage that he did to one of his own employees. And in such a polite and eager way, he asks his friend and colleague, can I throw you on those people? Citing that it would be hilarious, and he promises to heal them after, which this dialogue is telling as well, because it shows that Elvis has healing properties, healing powers, and that Elvis has a little bit of good in him that he would even think to heal another person after how much damage and destruction we've seen him do in the last few pages. And he promises to heal Torm after, and it makes you wonder how good his word is. Torm's no dummy, and he's known Elvis for a long time, using his logic against him, saying he didn't heal the guy on the ground. Why would he heal old Mr. Torm? And Elvis, in the weirdest way possible, says, because you're my buddy. We get to see that corruption. We get to see those sociopathic tendencies. We get to see how manipulative of a being that Elvis is. And we will have to wait until next episode to see what Torm does and how Torm responds to this advance from Elvis. Thank you times a million for watching this week. Thanks for coming back after such an amateuristic first episode. We're going to try and catch a stride here. We're going to try uploading much faster than usual. So please stick around and please look around for us on Reddit and YouTube. I will see you again next week.